Commander Zethkar stood before the holographic display in the war room of the Vorthak flagship Domination's Edge, his forearms crossed in frustration. The tactical map showed the Terran system glowing a menacing red, the universal symbol for forbidden territory. Around him, his most trusted officers shifted uncomfortably, their chitinous exoskeletons clicking with nervous energy. "Explain to me again," Zethkar said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 4 to 7 star systems, "why we must detour 3 parsecs around this insignificant yellow star system when it contains 17 habitable worlds ripe for colonization." Admiral Krekstov, his second-in-command, cleared his throat nervously. "Commander, the prohibition dates back 12,000 standard years. It's written into the Galactic Accords, the Stellar Neutrality Pact, even the Warrior's Code of Honor. No species has ever." "No species has ever what?" Zethkar interrupted, turning his predatory gaze on the Admiral. "Conquered a primitive species armed with chemical propulsion and metal projectiles? These humans haven't even achieved faster-than-light travel independently. Their most advanced weapons are fusion bombs that would barely scratch our ship's secondary shields." The war room fell silent except for the hum of the ship's massive engines. Through the viewport, the contested Rigel sector stretched before them, a prize that would cement the Vorthak Empire's dominance over this arm of the galaxy. But their direct route was blocked by that accursed yellow star and its collection of unremarkable planets. "The D2 will cost us 2 weeks," Zethkar continued, pacing before the tactical display. 2 weeks during which the Hegemony fleet will strengthen their positions. 2 weeks during which thousands of our warriors will die in prolonged combat because we're afraid of some ancient superstition. Navigator Yethral, the youngest officer present, tentatively raised one of her 6 arms. "Commander, if I may, the records from the archive keepers mention something called the Sol Incident." "Perhaps." "Fairy tales," Zethkar snapped. "Ancient propaganda designed to keep the lesser species in line. Look at the sensor readings. Their largest city-states burn fossil fuel for energy. Their vessels barely reach their nearest celestial neighbor. What could they possibly do to threaten a battle fleet that has reduced entire civilizations to atomic dust?" Admiral Krekstov stepped forward, his usually confident demeanor cracking. "Commander, with respect, every species in the galaxy honors this prohibition. The Crystalline Collective, who fear nothing. The Void Hunters, who consume entire solar systems. The Ethereal Dominion, who exist partially outside our reality. They all give the Terran system the widest possible berth. Doesn't that suggest?" "It suggests," Zethkar cut him off, "that 12,000 years of cowardice has infected even our greatest warriors. We are Vorthak. We have brought low the Titan worlds of Cephi. We have shattered the defensive networks of the Eternal Fortress. We have made the very stars tremble before our might." He slammed his primary fist onto the tactical console, causing the hologram to flicker. "And we're supposed to cower before a species that hasn't even learned to harvest stellar energy." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. They had followed Zethkar through the killing field of 100 worlds, watched him lead impossible charges against overwhelming odds. His courage was legendary, his tactical brilliance unquestioned. But this felt different. This felt like something that could end them all. "What do we actually know about these humans?" Zethkar demanded, calling up their intelligence files. The data stream showed a blue-green world third from its star, teeming with primitive cities and agricultural zones. Bilateral symmetry, carbon-based, oxygen-breathing. Average lifespan of roughly 8 decades. No significant psychic abilities, no remarkable physical adaptations. They wage wars among themselves using crude ballistic weapons. He gestured dismissively at the peaceful-looking planet rotating slowly in the hologram. "This is what is the entire galaxy paralyzed with fear? This collection of tribal mammals who haven't even unified their own world." "But, Commander," Navigator Yethral persisted, "the quantum resonance readings from their system are unusual. Our long-range sensors detect massive gravitational anomalies that don't correspond to any known stellar objects. And there are energy signatures that—" "Sensor ghosts," Zethkar said firmly. "Quantum echo from ancient battles, nothing more. The galaxy is full of such phenomena." He turned to face his assembled officers, his decision crystallizing. "We have a choice before us. We can add 2 weeks to our campaign, allowing the hegemony to entrench their positions and cost us countless warrior lives. Or we can take the direct route through this empty system, brushing aside whatever primitive defenses these humans might offer. The silence stretched until Admiral Krekstov found his voice. Commander, the Accords specify that violation of the Terran prohibition is punishable by complete species sterilization. Every government in the galaxy would unite against us. Zethkar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Only if they discover our route. A quick transit through the outer system, avoiding their detection grids, broadcasting on emergency frequencies to minimize contact. We'll be through in 18 hours and continue to Rigel. Who would ever know? He activated the command console, bringing up the navigation systems. Plot a course through the Terran system, avoiding the major gravitational bodies. We'll use the asteroid belt for cover and maintain communication silence. Commander, please reconsider. Admiral Krekstov tried one final time. The prohibition exists for a reason. Our ancestors weren't cowards. They were survivors. What if they knew something we've forgotten? Zethkar paused, studying the fear in his officer's eyes. These were warriors who had faced impossible odds without flinching, who had charged into plasma storms and dimensional rifts. Yet the mention of this one primitive species filled him with a dread he had never seen before. For a moment, doubt crept into his mind. But then he looked at the tactical display showing the Rigel sector, thought of the glory that awaited, the worlds that would bear the Vorthak name for millennia to come. Perhaps our ancestors were survivors, he said quietly. But we are conquerors. Set course for the Sol system. It's time the galaxy learned that there are no forbidden territories for the Vorthak Empire. The navigation officer's hands trembled as she input the coordinates. Around the bridge, officers began quietly checking their personal weapons and muttering prayers to half-forgotten gods. Deep in the ship's quantum core, the faster-than-light engines began their ominous build-up sequence. None of them noticed a brief flicker on the long-range sensors as something vast and ancient stirred in the darkness between stars, awakened after 12,000 years of patient waiting. The Domination's edge dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system with barely a whisper, its stealth generators masking their arrival from primitive human sensors. Commander Zethkar stood at the observation deck, studying the alien star system that had terrified the galaxy for millennia. It looked disappointingly ordinary. "Status report," he commanded, his confidence growing with each passing moment of normalcy. "We've achieved position at the system's heliopause," reported Navigator Yethral, though her voice carried an undertone of unease. Human detection grids show no awareness of our presence. Their most advanced monitoring stations are focused on the inner planets. Through the reinforced viewport, Zethkar could see the distant yellow star burning peacefully in the void, surrounded by the orbital patterns of 9 planets. No massive defense stations. No gravitational weapon platforms. No signs of the terrifying military might that supposedly justified 12,000 years of galactic prohibition. Sensor analysis of the inner system, he ordered. Admiral Krekstov manipulated the holographic display, highlighting the 3rd planet from the star. Earth shows a population of approximately 7 billion humans, distributed across 7 major landmasses. Their largest cities register significant electromagnetic emissions, radio waves, primitive computer networks, and what appears to be early satellite communication. Zethkar studied the peaceful blue world rotating in the hologram. Cities glowed like scattered gems across the nighttime continents, while swirling white clouds masked vast oceans. It was, by any objective measure, a beautiful world. It was also utterly defenseless. Military capabilities, he pressed. Fragmented command structures, Admiral Krekstov replied, calling up additional data streams. They maintained several hundred separate political entities, many in active conflict with each other. Their most advanced weapons appeared to be fusion-based missiles with chemical propulsion systems. Range is limited to their own planet and immediate orbital space. And this is what has kept the crystalline collective awake at night, Zethkar mused, his mandibles clicking with amusement. A species that fights with chemical explosives while we reshape matter at the quantum level. But even as he spoke, a nagging sensation crawled up his spine. The bridge crew remained unnaturally tense, constantly checking their instruments as if expecting some terrible revelation. Even the normally stoic Admiral Krekstov kept glancing at the emergency protocols display. "Commander," Navigator Yethral called out, her voice tight with concentration. "I'm detecting those gravitational anomalies I mentioned earlier. They're significant." The main display shifted to show quantum-level sensor readings. What Zethkar made him pause. Scattered throughout the Sol system were gravitational distortions that didn't match any known celestial objects. They appeared as dark voids in space-time itself, each one powerful enough to bend light around it. "What am I looking at?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. The distortions don't correspond to black holes, neutron stars, or any other natural phenomenon in our databases. They're artificial, but the technology required to create them is..." Yethral's voice trailed off. "Is what?" "Beyond our current understanding of physics, Commander. Each distortion represents a localized manipulation of space-time that would require the total energy output of a star to maintain." Zethkar frowned, studying the sensor readings more carefully. The anomalies were positioned throughout the system in what appeared to be a deliberate pattern, forming geometric shapes that seemed almost decorative. Could they be ancient defense systems? Automated weapons left by some predecessor species? "Possibly," Admiral Krekstov said, though he sounded doubtful. "But if so, they've been dormant for millennia. We're detecting no active energy signatures, no response to our presence." "Then we proceed as planned," Zethkar decided. "Plot a course through the asteroid belt, maintaining maximum distance from both the gravitational anomalies and the human settlements. We'll transfer the system in 12 hours and continue to Rigel." The navigation systems hummed to life, calculating their route through the cluttered inner system. On the tactical display, a green line appeared, threading carefully between the mysterious gravitational distortions and the orbiting planets where humans live their brief, primitive lives. As the domination's edge began its approach toward the asteroid belt, something changed. It was subtle at first, a barely perceptible shift in the quantum background radiation that pervaded all space. The ship's most sensitive instruments registered the change, but it was so minor that the automatic systems dismissed it as sensor drift. "Commander," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission." Zethkar spun around, his confidence suddenly wavering. "From where?" "The third planet. Sir, Earth. It's addressed to us specifically." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Every officer turned to stare at their commander, waiting for orders that seemed impossible to give. How could the primitive humans have detected them through military-grade stealth systems? "Put it through," Zethkar said finally, his voice steady despite the growing unease in his chest. The main display flickered, then resolved into the image of a human face. The being appeared elderly by their species standards, with pale skin marked by wrinkles and thin white hair. But the eyes held an intelligence that seemed to pierce through the screen and examine each crew member individually. "Greetings, warriors of the Vorthek Empire," the humans said in perfect galactic standard, a language that Earth supposedly had no knowledge of. "I am Dr. Elizabeth Chen, and I represent the Sol Defense Consortium. We've been expecting you." Zethkar's forearms clenched into fists. This was impossible. According to every intelligence report, humans were barely capable of interplanetary travel, let alone detecting cloaked alien vessels or learning galactic languages. "How do you know who we are?" he demanded. Dr. Chen smiled, and there was something deeply unsettling about the expression. "Commander Zethkar of the 47th Conquest Fleet, hero of the HFY campaign, conqueror of the Eternal Fortress. Your reputation precedes you across many star systems, as does your ambitious nature. You're monitoring galactic communications," Admiral Krekstov said, understanding dawning in his voice. "You're not as primitive as you appear." "Oh, we're every bit as primitive as we appear," Dr. Chen replied, her smile never wavering. "We still burn fossil fuels, fight wars over resources, struggle with diseases that more advanced species conquered millennia ago. But we had 12,000 years to prepare for visitors like you." The bridge erupted in nervous chitting as the crew processed this revelation. 12,000 years, the exact duration of the galactic prohibition. Whatever had happened to create that ancient law, the humans remembered it. "Dr. Chen," Zethkar said, fighting to keep his voice level, "we're simply passing through your system en route to other territories. We have no hostile intentions toward your species. Of course not, she agreed pleasantly. Just as you had no hostile intentions toward the Titan worlds of HFY or the defenders of the Eternal Fortress. Your record speaks for itself, Commander. She leaned forward slightly, and for a moment, Zethkar could have sworn her eyes reflected light like polished metal. But I'm afraid passage through our system requires payment of a toll. Nothing excessive, just a small demonstration of good faith. What kind of toll? Zethkar asked, though every instinct told him he didn't want to know the answer. Dr. Chen's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too numerous. Oh, nothing you can't afford, Commander. We simply require one member of your crew. Any member will do. Consider it a cultural exchange program. The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop several degrees. Around the command center, officers began backing away from their stations, their natural predator instinct screaming warnings that their rational minds couldn't yet process. And if we refuse? Zethkar managed to ask. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the quantum background radiation surrounding their ship. The gravitational anomalies scattered throughout the system began to pulse in perfect synchronization, like a massive heartbeat echoing through space-time itself. Well, she said softly, I suppose we'll have to activate the old defenses. They've been sleeping for such a long time, and they do get rather hungry when they wake up. The Domination's edge shuddered as gravitational waves washed over its hull, each pulse from the mysterious anomalies growing stronger and more coordinated. Commander Zethkar gripped the command rail as his flagship, a vessel that had weathered the storms of dying stars, groaned under forces that defied every law of physics he understood. Cut the transmission, he ordered, but Dr. Chen's image remained on the screen, her unsettling smile never wavering. I'm afraid that won't work, Commander, she said pleasantly. We're using a quantum entanglement communication protocol. The connection can only be severed from our end. Admiral Krekstov frantically worked his console, trying to break free from whatever technology was holding them. Sir, our engines are responding normally, but something is interfering with our navigation systems. Every course change we attempt redirects us toward the inner system. Through the viewport, Zethkar could see the asteroid belt approaching, but something was wrong with it. What had appeared on long-range sensors as a standard collection of rocky debris was revealing itself to be something far more disturbing. The asteroids weren't randomly distributed chunks of stone and metal. They were arranged in perfect geometric patterns, forming structures that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Chen, Zethkar said, fighting to keep his voice steady, what exactly are those formations in your asteroid belt? Ah, you've noticed the gardens, she replied, her tone carrying the same casual warmth as if discussing the weather. Beautiful, aren't they? Each one is a monument to a species that chose to ignore our simple request for passage tolls. The tactical display updated as their sensors got a closer look at the asteroids. What they had taken for natural rock formations were revealed to be the compressed remains of massive starships, their hulls and superstructures crushed into geometric sculptures that defied comprehension. Some were recognizable. The crystalline matrices of collective vessels, the living bone structures of ethereal Dominion craft, the quantum-folded armor of ships from races whose names were lost to history. This is impossible, Navigator Yethral whispered, her readings becoming more disturbing by the moment. These vessels, some of them are from species that went extinct thousands of years ago, and the compression patterns, the gravitational forces required would collapse matter down to the atomic level. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. Very good. Your navigator has excellent observational skills. Yes, we've been collecting visitors for quite some time. Each one thought they were the first to test humanity's defenses. Each one believed their superior technology would protect them. She gestured towards something off-screen, and the display shifted to show a wider view of the asteroid belt. What had looked like random debris fields from a distance revealed themselves as vast galleries of compressed starships, arranged with artistic precision around gravitational focal points that pulse with their own internal light. The Hegemony Dreadnought Infinite Conquest makes a particularly striking centerpiece in Section 7, Dr. Chen continued conversationally. They arrived about 3,000 years ago with a fleet of 200 vessels, convinced that their reality-warping weapons would be sufficient. The compression process preserved their quantum signatures beautifully. Admiral Krextother's mandibles clicked nervously as he processed the tactical implications. Commander, if these readings are accurate, some of these compressed vessels were equipped with planet-killer weapons, Starbreaker missiles, dimensional cascade bombs. We're looking at the remains of military forces that could have sterilized entire sectors. And yet here they are, Dr. Chen said sweetly, adding to our collection. You see, Commander Zethkar, the prohibition against entering human space wasn't established out of fear of what we might do to the galaxy. It was established out of fear of what the galaxy might awaken if it disturbed us. The ship's engines began resonating with a frequency that made the crew's exoskeletons ache. Through the hull, they could feel something vast and patient turning its attention toward them, not hostile, exactly, but curious in a way a researcher might examine an interesting specimen. What are you? Zethkar demanded, his warrior's pride finally cracking under the weight of mounting terror. Dr. Chen's image flickered, and for just a moment, her human appearance wavered. Beneath the familiar bipedal form, something else showed through, something that existed in too many dimensions for their senses to properly register, something that made the ship's AI systems crash and restart repeatedly as they tried to process data that shouldn't exist. We're exactly what we appear to be, she said, her form stabilizing back into human appearance. A primitive species that burns fossil fuels and fights with chemical explosives. But we're also the custodians of something that was left here long before your species learned to manipulate fire. The gravitational anomalies throughout the system began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing speed and coordination. They weren't separate defense platforms. They were components of a single massive entity that spanned the entire Sol system, using the planets themselves as anchor points for its incomprehensible structure. 12,000 years ago, Dr. Chen continued, the first expedition to test humanity's defenses awakened something that had been sleeping since the universe was young. The survivors who escaped, and there were survivors, Commander, we're not unreasonable, spread word throughout the galaxy about what they had found here. She leaned back in her chair, and Zethkar noticed that the background behind her showed not the primitive planetary surface their senses had detected, but a vast chamber filled with geometric forms that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They told a story about a species of primitive mammals who had somehow become the guardians of an entity that existed before stars learned to burn. They spoke of gravitational forces that could compress matter into artistic sculptures, of technologies that made the laws of physics seem like gentle suggestions. Most importantly, they carried a warning. The ship's hull began to resonate in harmony with the gravitational pulses, creating a sound that bypassed their hearing entirely and spoke directly to their nervous systems. It was beautiful and terrifying, a song that had been playing since the birth of galaxies, temporarily interrupted by their arrival but now resuming its eternal melody. The warning was simple, Dr. Chen said, her voice now carrying harmonics that no human throat should be able to produce. Leave the humans alone, not because they are dangerous, but because they guard something that is. Disturb them, and you risk awakening forces that have been content to sleep in the spaces between thoughts. Commander Zethkar felt his warrior's courage finally deserting him completely. This wasn't a battle that could be won through superior firepower or tactical brilliance. This was something that existed on a level of reality where such concepts had no meaning. "What do you want from us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Chen's smile returned, warm and grandmotherly and absolutely terrifying in its implications. "Oh, the same thing we've always wanted. Commander, we simply want to be left alone to tend our gardens and guard our ancient charge. But since you've come this far, we do require that cultural exchange I mentioned." The gravitational forces surrounding their ship intensified, not crushing them but holding them in place with the gentle inevitability of a spider's web. Around the bridge, crew members began to feel a strange tugging sensation, as if something was examining each of them individually and making careful selections. One crew member, Dr. Chen repeated, voluntarily offered, "Of course. We believe in the importance of consent. In return, the rest of you will be allowed to leave our system with an interesting story to tell and the knowledge that humanity's reputation for hospitality remains intact." The tugging sensation focused on Navigator Yethral, the youngest member of their crew, whose quantum calculations had been the most accurate in predicting the system's anomalies. She looked at Commander Zethkar with eyes that showed she understood exactly what was being asked of her. "Commander," she said quietly. Permission to volunteer for cultural exchange duties. Absolutely not, Commander Zethkar snarled, his protective instincts overriding his fear. Navigator Yethral was barely past her combat trials, still young enough to believe in the honor of military service and the glory of conquest. He would not sacrifice her to whatever horrors humanity was hiding behind their primitive facade. I appreciate the noble sentiment, Dr. Chen said, her voice carrying that same unsettling warmth. But I'm afraid the selection has already been made. Your navigator's quantum sensitivity makes her particularly suitable for our purposes. The tugging sensation around Yethral intensified, and she began to glow with a soft phosphorescence as something scanned a molecular structure with impossible precision. Her 6 arms spread wide as she felt forces beyond comprehension examining every atom of her being. "Sir," she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances, "I volunteer, if my sacrifice allows the fleet to complete its mission." "Your sacrifice allows nothing," Zethkar roared, charging toward the communications console. "We are Vorthak. We do not negotiate with primitives, and we do not abandon our crew to alien horrors." He began frantically inputting commands, overriding safety protocols, and pushing their engines beyond recommended limits. If humanity wanted to play games with gravitational anomalies, they would learn what Vorthak military engineering could accomplish when pushed to its breaking point. "Fascinating," Dr. Chen observed as their ship's power level spiked. "You're actually going to try to fight your way out. How refreshingly traditional." The Domination's Edge surged forward, its engines carving brilliant streaks through space as Zethkar pushed every system beyond red-line specifications. Around them, the compressed remains of ancient starships seemed to watch a desperate escape attempt with the patience of eternal monuments. "So, the gravitational anomalies are responding," Admiral Krekstov reported, his voice tight with concentration. "They are moving to intercept our flight path." Through the viewport, they could see the mysterious distortions shifting position with fluid grace, flowing through space like living things. What had appeared as static defense platforms revealed themselves as mobile entities, each one capable of manipulating local space-time with casual precision. "Weapons status," Zethkar commanded. "All primary batteries charged and ready," the weapons officer responded. "Quantum torpedoes loaded, particle beam arrays online." "Sir, what are our target priorities?" Zethkar studied the tactical display, trying to identify weak points in humanity's defenses. The gravitational anomalies seemed to be the key components, but targeting them would be like trying to destroy holes in space itself. Still, they had to try something. Target the nearest anomaly with a full spread of quantum torpedoes. If we can disrupt their gravitational manipulation, we might be able to break free. The torpedoes streak away from their ship, each one carrying enough destructive power to level a small moon. They struck the gravitational distortion in perfect formation, their quantum warheads detonating in a cascade of exotic particles and compressed energy. For a moment, the anomaly flickered and seemed to weaken. Then it absorbed the entire attack, growing brighter and more substantial as it converted their weapons' energy into additional gravitational potential. "Interesting choice," Dr. Chen commented. "Most species try the diplomatic approach first. Your direct military response shows a refreshing honesty about your intentions." More anomalies moved to surround their ship, creating a 3-dimensional web of gravitational forces that began to slow their escape attempt. The Domination's Edge fought against the invisible bonds, its engines screaming as they tried to overcome forces that existed outside normal physics. "So, hull stress is approaching critical levels," the engineering officer reported. "These gravitational fields are trying to compress us into one of their sculptures." Navigator Yethral, still glowing with that strange phosphorescence, suddenly looked up from her console with an expression of wonder and terror. "Commander, I'm receiving data transmissions directly into my neural pathways. I can see what they really are." "Report?" Zethkar ordered, though part of him didn't want to know. "The humans aren't lying about being primitive," she said, her voice carrying an odd harmonic resonance. "They really are just mammals who burn fossil fuels. But they are also something else. They are the chosen custodians of an entity that exists across multiple dimensions simultaneously." The glow around her intensified, and her eyes began to reflect light like polished metal. The entity has been asleep for billions of years, using the solar system as a resting place while it dreams of the universe's eventual evolution. The humans were selected to guard its slumber because they are psychologically compatible with its thought patterns. What does that mean? Admiral Krekstoff demanded. Yethral's smile became disturbingly similar to Dr. Chen's expression. It means they share the entity's capacity for both incredible creativity and absolute ruthlessness. They can appreciate the artistic beauty of compressed starships while simultaneously calculating the most efficient methods to create them. The ship lurched as more gravitational forces locked onto their hull, but these felt different, more personal, as if something vast and ancient was examining them with growing interest. The entity is starting to wake up, Yethral continued, her voice now carrying harmonics that no Vorthak throat should be able to produce. Our weapons, fire, and escape attempts have created quantum resonances in its dream state. It's curious about us. Through the viewport, space itself began to ripple and distort. The familiar star patterns twisted into impossible geometries as something unimaginably large stirred in the dimensions that existed between normal matter. The compressed starships in the asteroid belt began to pulse with synchronized light, their quantum signatures harmonizing in a song that spoke of civilizations lost to hubris and curiosity. "Commander," Dr. Chen said, her image now flickering with additional dimensional shadows, "I strongly recommend you accept our original offer. The cultural exchange program is looking more attractive by the moment, don't you think?" Zethkar looked around his bridge at officers who had followed him through impossible battles, warriors who had never shown fear in the face of overwhelming odds. Now they stood frozen, watching their instruments register phenomena that shouldn't exist while reality itself seemed to bend around their ship. "What happens to Navigator Yethral if we agree?" he asked finally. "She joins our collection of interesting individuals," Dr. Chen replied. "Not as a prisoner or victim, but as a student. She'll learn things about the universe that no textbook can teach, see wonders that exist in the spaces between thoughts. In time, she might even choose to become one of our permanent cultural ambassadors." The phosphorescent glow around Yethral pulsed brighter, and she looked at her commander with eyes that held depths of knowledge no being her age should possess. "So," she said quietly, "I think I understand now why the Prohibition exists. It's not to protect the galaxy from humanity. It's to protect humanity from what they might become if they are forced to fully wake their guardian." The entity stirring in the depths of space sent out a pulse of curiosity that made every quantum field in the system resonate like struck crystal. In that moment, Commander Zethkar realized that they weren't dealing with a military engagement or even a first contact scenario. They were being offered a choice between voluntary cultural exchange and involuntary participation in something far more profound and terrifying than simple conquest. The ancient entity was waking up, and it was very, very interested in meeting them. The moment of decision stretched like a hell breath across the bridge of the domination's edge. Commander Zethkar felt the weight of 12,000 years of galactic history pressing down on him, understanding finally why every species in known space honored the prohibition against human contact. This wasn't about military might or technological superiority. It was about something far more fundamental and terrifying. "Navigator Yethral," he said quietly, his voice carrying the authority of a leader who had guided his people through countless battles. "The choice is yours. I will not order you to sacrifice yourself, nor will I prevent you from volunteering." The young navigator looked at him with those strangely illuminated eyes, her expression mixing fear with a growing sense of wonder. "Commander, I think they are offering me something unprecedented. A chance to understand the universe from a perspective that no Vorthak has ever experienced." Dr. Chen's image smiled approvingly. "Your navigator is quite perceptive. We're not offering sacrifice or imprisonment. We're offering education, the kind of knowledge that comes from direct communion with forces that shape reality itself." The gravitational anomalies around their ship pulsed in harmony, and through that rhythm, Yethral began to hear something that transcended language or conventional communication. It was a sound of cosmic evolution itself, the deep mathematics that govern how matter learned to think, how consciousness emerged from quantum chaos, how civilizations rose and fell in patterns too vast for individual minds to comprehend. "I accept," she said simply, stepping away from her navigation console. The phosphorescent glow around her intensified, and her form began to shimmer as if she were stepping between dimensions. "Yethral," Admiral Krekstoff called out, his voice thick with emotion. Remember who you are. Remember your people. She turned back to her crewmates one final time, and her smile held depths that spoke of knowledge already beginning to transform her understanding of existence itself. I will remember everything, Admiral, and someday, when the Vorthek Empire is ready, I'll return to share what I've learned. The translation beam activated, pulling her gently away from their ship and towards something that existed in the spaces between normal matter. As she dissolved into light and possibility, her final words echoed through the quantum communication system. Tell them that humanity guards something beautiful, something that dreams of what the universe might become when it finally learns to dream. Dr. Chen nodded respectfully as Yethral form completed its transition into whatever realm the entity inhabited. She'll be well cared for, Commander. We take our responsibilities as cultural ambassadors very seriously. The ancient entity that had been stirring in the depths of space settled back into its slumber, satisfied with its brief glimpse of the current state of galactic civilization. The gravitational forces holding the domination's edge began to relax, though they remained strong enough to guide the ship toward the system's outer boundaries. You're free to leave, Dr. Chen continued. Your passage through our system has been educational for all involved. We trust you'll share your experience with the appropriate authorities when you return to Vorthak space. Commander Zethkar found his voice, though it carried none of its former arrogance. What will happen to our navigator? She'll learn, Dr. Chen replied simply. She'll discover what it means to guard something that exists in the spaces between thoughts, to shepherd dreams that span geological ages. And when she's ready, she'll help us maintain the balance that keeps the universe stable. The domination's edge began its slow journey toward the system's edge, escorted by gravitational forces that felt almost gentle now compared to their early intensity. Behind them, the compressed remains of countless civilizations glittered in the starlight like a museum of cosmic hubris, each sculpture a testament to species that had believed themselves above ancient warnings. Commander, Admiral Krextar said quietly, what do we tell the High Command? Zethkar stared out at the peaceful yellow star that harbored such impossible secrets. We tell them the truth, that humanity is exactly what they appear to be, primitive mammals who burn fossil fuels and fight with chemical explosives. We also tell them that they guard something so ancient and powerful that disturbing it could unravel the fundamental structures that hold reality together. As they approached the heliopause, Dr. Chen's image began to fade from their communication system. Commander Zethkar, before you leave, there's something you should understand about the Prohibition. It wasn't created to protect the galaxy from humanity's military might. It exists because every species that has achieved true cosmic awareness eventually realizes the same fundamental truth. Which is? Zethkar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer, that some guardians are chosen not for their strength, but for their ability to remain stable while tending forces that could reshape existence itself. Humanity was selected by the entity not because they were the most advanced species available, but because they possessed the psychological flexibility to maintain their essential nature while serving as custodian for something incomprehensibly vast. The communication channel closed, leaving the bridge in relative silence. Around them, the normal physics of interstellar space reasserted themselves as they moved beyond the Sol system's influence. The gravitational anomalies faded into the background, returning to their eternal vigil around a yellow star that appeared utterly unremarkable to casual observation. Course for Vorthek Prime, Zethkar ordered, his voice carrying a weariness that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. Maximum speed, avoiding all inhabited systems. So, the communications officer reported, we're receiving priority messages from the Rigel sector. The hegemony forces are requesting immediate reinforcement for the assault on contested worlds. Commander Zethkar looked at the tactical display showing their original destination, where thousands of warriors waited for the reinforcements that would never come. The detour around human space would add weeks to their journey, potentially costing countless lives and strategic opportunities. By any military calculation, it was an unacceptable sacrifice. Yet as he stared at the readings from their encounter, at the quantum signatures that still registered impossible energy densities and the gravitational echoes that spoke of forces beyond comprehension, he realized that some costs were worth paying. Send a message to all Vorthek fleets, he commanded. Effective immediately, the Sol system is to be treated as a Class Omega hazard zone. No vessels are to approach within 50 parsecs without explicit authorization from the High Command. Any ship that violates this order will be considered lost with all hands. So, Admiral Krekstoff asked, what reason should we give? Zethkar thought of Navigator Yethral, of her final words about humanity guarding something beautiful, of the entity that dreamed in the spaces between thoughts while primitive mammals tended its slumber with fossil fuel technology and chemical explosives. Tell them, he said quietly, that we have discovered why the ancient prohibition exists. Some boundaries aren't meant to protect us from what lies beyond them. They are meant to protect what lies beyond them from us. The Domination's Edge accelerated toward open space, leaving behind a yellow star system that looked exactly like thousands of others scattered throughout the galaxy. To any external observer, nothing had changed. The prohibition remained in place. Humanity continued their primitive existence, and the ancient entity slept peacefully in dimensions that existed between normal matter. But in the compressed sculptures of the asteroid belt, a new addition began to take shape. Not a starship this time, but a living monument to the courage of a young navigator who had chosen knowledge over safety, wonder over certainty. Navigator Yethral's quantum signature joined the eternal song that played in the spaces between thoughts, adding her voice to a chorus that had been growing for 12,000 years. And in the deep archives of Vorthak military intelligence, a new file was created and immediately classified at the highest security levels. It contained a single entry, Sol System, Guardian Protocol active, approach forbidden by order of divine necessity. The galaxy continued its eternal dance of civilizations rising and falling, species exploring and conquering, empires expanding and contracting. But around one unremarkable yellow star, the ancient prohibition held firm, protecting both the universe's stability and humanity's right to remain exactly what they had always been, the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because they had never tried to become anything more than human. In the end, that was the most terrifying revelation of all.